Hello, my name is Michael Coulombe and I'm 45 years old.
So I want to start off our conversation with one question.
Okay.
What do you think people's first impression of you is?
Oh, wow. I always assume that everybody thinks their first impression is I'm really nice, but I probably come off a little obnoxious because I just have a lot of energy and I have a lot of passion. So I think I always tell people I kind of come in like a wrecking ball of like pure joy. So I think people's first impression is like, yeah, he's a great guy, but whoo, after 10 minutes I needed like a break. That's what I think people's first impression of me is.
So where are you?
It's just, I'm telling you, I run solely on passion, and so I know people always tell me they think I'm a really nice guy, and they can tell that I have a good heart, but I do have a lot of energy. So I come at you. I really don't mean this is who I am.
Does that type of personality and energy, does that help you? I don't know what you do for a living, so does that help you in what you do? Or?
Yes, actually it does. So I work in film, and we work really long hours. We work 12, 13, 14 hours a day, sometimes 5 or 6 days a week. So what I have been told is people like having me on set because I have so much energy that I kind of help. I'm kind of a motivator in a sense, So it's like after you have lunch and you're in your food coma on hour 8, people are like, "Oh, thank God you have so much energy. You just keep us going." That's what I've been told. So I guess that's a good thing.
What do you do for the industry?
So I started off. For the last 15 years, I've been a script supervisor. So what a script supervisor does is I kind of sit next to the director and I help track continuity. So I have the script open in front of me and I just go through the scene while we shoot and I track like what the actors are doing. So any actor movement. So if they like do this with their hair, if they sit or stand, if they grab a prop or drink, I note take it on the script where they do it and then make sure that they consistently do it every take for every angle so that the movie's easier to cut. And then I log all that information and I send it to the editor every night. And I do that take after take after take, scene after scene after scene, shot after shot, day after day. And so like it creates like this little Bible that you send to the editor and they're like, great, these are all the shots, and my job is to help them organize it so that they can cut the movie in post.
Well, now your energy makes even more sense to me because you have to be so hyper-focused and hyper-vigilant at work.
Yeah. And I just, and I have a sort of like an energy that draws people in, so it's a little easier because, it takes many eyes, even though I'm like the one that's supposed to pay attention. Sometimes, it just takes many eyes to like make sure that we're all looking at the same thing. And then the last 2 to 2.5 years, I've been writing and directing a lot more. So.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So I've never heard of the position that you just described. So tell me.
Yeah, it's not very well known.
Right. But so it makes me curious because is that something growing up that you were like, I want to do that?
No,
or
I didn't notice that. When I was a kid, I really wanted to be a novelist and a playwright. And I did want to make movies, but I guess I didn't know that I could. Like, I wanted to write them and make them, but I didn't know that there was a position that started in pre-production, that went through production and ended in post-production. I wasn't aware. And I would always watch a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff, and people are like, oh, I hate watching that stuff. It kind of ruins the magic for me. And for me, I was like, no, it enhances it. I love, like, learning. And I didn't know that there was a specific position that sort of did that until I was about 30 years old. I had a full-time job. I wanted to be a writer, but I was hitting a point in my life where I was not really happy with the way things were going because I knew I wanted to do more. And I was tired of working in an office where, like, no one would listen to what I had to say, even if I could prove that they needed to hear something that was important. And so a friend of mine asked me one time, and he goes, hey, you're a really good writer. Would you help me write this script? And I said, I don't know, man. I don't know really anything about writing scripts because I've never done it. It was never what I wanted to do. And he said, hey, I have a friend that interviewed the script supervisor, and he teaches this course. He goes, you should consider taking the course because what's great about script supervising is it'll teach you script breakdown. I said, okay, that's a valid argument. So I took the course. I audited it one day. I thought it seemed very fascinating, and I decided to take the course. I studied script supervising for 6 months, actually here in Van Nuys, at a place it's not around anymore because the gentleman passed away. But I studied for 6 months, found it very interesting, had no desire to do it, as more as I just wanted to learn it. But then after 6 months of having the skill, I was like, all right, well, I still don't like my job. Like, what do I do now? And I mean, the story of getting me into film could be a whole podcast in itself, by the way. But I just got frustrated enough with my job, and one day something bad happened, and it pushed me over the edge, and I said, I quit. And she said, well, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I guess I'm going to go make movies. Because it was really the only other thing I knew. And I remember saying, I didn't have a plan. That was the weird thing, was like I just knew I couldn't do what I was doing, but I didn't really have a plan. And I said, look, Jewel, the singer, slept in her car for 2 years because when she wanted to be a singer. So if she can do it, I can do it. And so, I mean, it was a bold claim, and I kind of did that, by the way, in a sense. But I made that decision and then went back to my desk, and I was like, damn, what do I do now? I have no plan. So I actually called a friend of mine, and I was like, so I just quit my job. I don't know what I'm going to do. And he says, I'm working on a project right now. And at that time, we were moving from film into video, and it was right before I went to digital. He said, look, I'm trying to make myself digital. He goes, why don't you come and like script supervise this project with me? Do the paper notes in case I try to transition myself to digital. And that way you're like a backup. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Get me out of this office. So I went in Human Resources again and gave my 2-week notice, but then I had to go back in, and I was gone 4 days later. And I remember just like walking up and down the hall, and people were just like, wow, you quit? What are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know, I guess I'm going to go make movies. I've always wanted to be a writer and stuff. And people were just like, wow, you can do that? I was like, I think so. Like, I'm going to try.
You're like, I'm going to find out.
Yeah. And they were always like, and they're just like, well, I can't do that. Like, I have a husband, or I have a wife, or I have kids. And I always told them, I said, look, you have a different life than I do. And I understand that, like, you're not in a position to be able to do that because you do have these responsibilities that are important. But what I did tell them is, I said, the only thing I ever ask is just let your kids know that they can do this. Like, it's okay to follow your dreams. And I just said it, not realizing that it was something I was going to do. But I walked off my job, started making movies, and I have been doing it for 15 years. Never even thought I would be script supervising. Never thought I'd be any good at it. Never thought I'd enjoy it. And never thought it would open all the doors it's opened for me.
That is incredible. What a cool story. So it's funny because you brought up how other people at your job were like, oh, I could never do that. I have this responsibility. I have this. Yeah. I feel like this came up in another interview recently, is we always wait for the right time to do things. It's like double dutch, where you want to jump in just at the right time. Your support system, your family, are you close with your family? How did they feel about your choice? Did that create any friction?
It did, and I'll tell you, and I know my mother doesn't like me telling this story, but I will tell it because I do think it's important. Finding a support system in film, especially in an artistic field, is very difficult in a lot of ways because it's not a 9-to-5 job. So it's not like I wake up every day at a specific time and then I go to work and da-da-da. So it's like it's a constant hustle. And I'm much more established in the industry, and it's still a hustle. Like, you just always have to keep finding. And I just don't think our society adapts us for that kind of life. It's like we're taught that, like, you go to college, you get a job, you work every day, da-da-da. And I did that, and I was miserable, and it just wasn't who I am. It did take me a moment to realize that, to be a successful, I guess, entrepreneur, worker from home. When I made the decision, my mom's like, oh, wait, you want to make movies? And I go, yeah, Mom, like, you act surprised. Like, we had a video camera when we were kids. It was a big VHS thing. My parents bought it. In their mind, they bought it because they wanted to use it on road trips. But in my mind, it was for me to make movies with, clearly, because no one knew how to work the camera but me, because I used it religiously. Right? And I did. I made little home videos all the time with my sister and her friends and stuff. And so, I mean, I told my mom, I go, Mom, I was going to go on this path. It seemed like it was going to happen. But there was a story that I tell, and it took me years to remember this, but she worked with this lady who ended up being Brian Grazier's mother, Brian Grazier, the producer. His mother was a banker, and they worked together, I want to say, South Coast Plaza in Orange County. And I guess she used to hear stories of, like, what Brian Grazier would go through when he was going in the industry. And my mother had this strange preconceived notion of, like, what film was like based on these stories. And I mean, it's not an easy industry. Like, you know, working from home and being self-employed, it's not always easy, especially because you have to hustle. And I think, like I said, people are always taught that, like, the life you're supposed to lead is you get a job, you work 9 to 5, that, you know, 5 days a week. But I could work, you know, weeks on end and then not have work for like 3 weeks. And then of course, the weird thing is which I think is fascinating because I love traveling, is I could get a job today and be on a plane in 2 days and be gone for 5 weeks, which happens a lot more than you'd realize. But I love that. And so so that's what I was trying to tell people. It's like, you can do it. It is tough if you don't have a support system that you need. And when I first started, I didn't have that, but I don't really blame my parents. They just didn't understand. Like, I was the only person in the family that made this decision, you know? like everybody else on the. I was like, Michael? Why can't you just be normal? I was like, but I tried to tell my mom this is normal to me, you know.
So yeah, normal is normal.
Yeah.
I don't think you can define normal. Being human is normal.
Yeah.
So I remember I took a class at UC Santa Barbara, and the professor never taught. It was a Tuesday, Thursday class, and every class was a different guest speaker.
Oh, interesting.
And there was a gentleman who came in, and he was in a wheelchair, and he had cerebral palsy, and he talked about his life, and I will never forget it. I was 17 years old, and this class still sticks with me, and I'm 42.
Oh, wow.
And this man said, people ask me all the time if I wished I was normal. Mm-hmm. And my answer to them is, I am normal.
Yeah.
And I cried in class that day, and it really meant a lot to me, and I think that changed a lot of my perspective on how I viewed a lot of things in the world.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I think your normal is your normal.
Yeah.
You're human, and what makes you individual is what makes your normal.
Yeah, that was one of the things I had to make my. Now the interesting is, here we are 15 years later, my family loves it. They've all been on set many times. They've met tons of celebrities. So they're like, and then of course I make a living from it. I can do it full time, and it's my full time. So I think my mom is like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess you can make a living on it. But it was like I was the first person in my family to make that decision to do it, to be a freelancer, especially in film. And so I think that I just was like, I had to like. I'm like that guy in my family. Like I was the first one to come out as gay, and so like now, like everybody, if there's an issue, they come to me. Like I'm like the some weird way. I'm like a random trailblazer. I wasn't trying to be, and I don't. That's probably a bold enough claim, but I just for some reason I just never let anything stop me. I guess it's so random.
I think that's funny. Like you said, you're like the trailblazer of your family.
Yeah.
You're like, well, this is how it's going to be, people. We're doing this.
Well, it's true because like I have a cousin who's a little bit older than I was, and I actually came out before she did. I actually came out at 17, and I was in high school, and I was like, oh, Mom, I think I'm different, and she's like, oh God, okay. I have a twin sister, so it's like we're so vastly different. Like, you know, my sister just lives, I guess, her normal life. She just has kids, and she works, and I'm the one that's like, nope, I'm just gonna get on a plane tomorrow and leave for 5 weeks. My sister's like, okay, have fun, be safe, let us know when you get there.
So what was it like having a twin?
So, and I will tell you, people ask me that question, and I don't know how to answer it because I don't know what it's like to not be a twin.
Good answer.
Yeah, and so
dumb question.
No,
Good job.
It's actually a really great question because I know people are fascinated, but the weird thing is I just don't have a frame of reference. But the interesting is because we're fraternal, I have a twin sister, so we don't look alike specifically. So, I guess in some weird ways it doesn't feel any different because she's just my sister. We just happen to have the exact same birthday, and she's 5 minutes older. So, yeah, I will tell you this is actually interesting. Most people don't know this, but we're actually triplets. But my mother miscarried one of the babies early in her pregnancy, so she gave birth to 2 babies, but 3 placentas. Yeah.
Oh wow.
I know. We don't even know if it was like we don't know if it was another fraternal twin. We don't know if it's identical twin of one of us. We'll never know. Yeah. It's
wow.
very fascinating. Yeah.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's also very interesting because I never knew that was possible. Like you always think about if there's a miscarriage, then everything gets disrupted.
Yeah. I don't know. I was born this was 1975. My mother at the time was younger and didn't really have, I think, the best medical insurance. So she thought she miscarried. She went to the doctor. The doctor's like, she didn't even know she was having twins. So I told this when my grandmother passed away. I had a funeral. I was telling the story of how my grandmother always told me I was her little surprise because when my sister was born, she ran out into the waiting room and said, "It's a girl." And then she came back in and she's like, "Oh, it's a boy!" Like so.
And a boy.
Yeah. So I was always like, because nobody knew, and so they gave birth to my sister. I was born 5 minutes later, and I was a little bit smaller, so I had to stay in the hospital a little bit longer. Yeah, that was a little bitty baby thing. So,
well,
and now I'm taller than my sister.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Not much taller, but I'm 5'11". I want to say she's 5'8", 5'7". She's a little bit smaller.
So I'm going to ask you a question. You can answer it or not answer it, but
okay.
You brought it up, so I'm going there.
Oh, please. Nothing's off limits.
You know, you mentioned coming out to your family. What did that process look like for you? Because I don't know if you've seen one of the other episodes that I did as an interview with Jonathan.
Oh, I
and he talks about how he figured himself out kind of around age 5 and had this whole process. It's really interesting to me, so that's why I was curious.
I actually, at the age of 17, was kind of seeing this guy in high school. I mean, I say seeing kind of because it's like I didn't know anything, the first thing about dating, because it's not society tells you how to date as a gay man or a gay woman. So there was this guy that I liked, and then, but my mother knew us, we were just friends. And then we had this really bad fight, and it broke my heart. It was the first time I really understood what heartbreak was. And I just remember, like, I was so distraught. And my mom comes in my room one day, and she's like, what's wrong? And I was like, oh, you know, Matthew and I aren't friends anymore. And she's like, okay, well, you'll find other friends. Like, that's what life is about. And I was like, oh, I don't know how to tell this. And I was so terrified to tell my mother that I made her guess. And I was like, Mom, there's something I have to tell you. And she's like, oh my God, you're on drugs. Like, oh my God, you got somebody pregnant. She's throwing everything you can think of. I was like, no, Mom, it's not something I did. It's something about me. And I think she kind of always knew. And she sat there for the longest time, and she went, oh my God, are you gay? And I was like, yes. Like, it was just like this weird, but that was my coming out story. I couldn't tell her. I had to make her guess. Like I said, my poor mother, the stuff I put her through.
I think we all put our parents through some things, and they're just different experiences in different stages of life, right?
Yeah. I mean,
but I also don't think that you being gay puts her through anything. I think the guessing game, playing 20 questions might not have been so fun for her.
I just was like, I didn't know how she would react, and I kind of was gauging her, and she was saying everything but I do remember it took her a while to really deal with it. And I remember my mother was down, I think she had gallbladder surgery when I was in high school, and I remember she was down for a couple of months as she was recuperating. And I remember specifically she was doing a lot of research at the time, because she'd pointed out this thing to me where she says, Michael, it's very common among twins that one ends up being gay. Which I already knew that because I had studied it. And it is. I have a lot of friends that are twins, and one of them is usually, not usually, but more often than not, one of them is gay. In fact, when I was growing up and I was going to the gay clubs, I actually hung out with triplets, and 2 of them were gay. One was a gay guy and one was a lesbian. So I already knew that, but it told me then that she was trying to find ways to process that information. I thought it was kind of cool. I mean, they're used to it now. I mean, I'm 45, so I've actually been gay longer than I've been straight. So, which, by the way, I was never straight.
Right.
But I just perceived as straight. Yeah.
Right.
So, but I like talking about it because, especially in this sort of like political climate we're in right now, is I think the best way for people to understand things is just to be open to educating them. And I said that to a lot of people all the time. I said, I never have any problem with anybody asking me any questions, because the thing I can do is just educate you and make you better. And when I first came out, I had a lot of friends that didn't like me because of it. And they just, but they liked me as a person. And they're like, I can't grapple with this. And I was like, well, first of all, I don't define myself as being gay. It's not who I am. I'm still your friend. And I said, and if there's things that you don't understand, I would be more than happy to answer them. And they would ask me questions. And sometimes it'd be personal, and I'm like, if you want to know, I'll tell you. But if you don't, like, let me know when you're uncomfortable with the topic, and we can change it. But I think the more that they realize that, like, I was literally dealing with the exact same things they were dealing with. It's like, does this guy like me? And I'm nervous, and we're going on a date. And then it's like, we would have the same relationship issues. And then at the same time, I was juggling, like, trying to figure out my job and my career. And my friends were like, damn, you literally go through the exact same things that I go through. And I'm like, yeah. Literally, like, my life is literally just like yours. The only difference is I'm attracted to somebody of the same sex. It's the only difference.
You're not a subspecies.
Yeah.
You just have a different attraction.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah.
You said something about educating people and informing them, and if you have questions, ask. Is the only way to understand. Yeah. Part of my mission in doing the show, and part of why I wanted to do it, is because I think that the only way we can treat each other better is to try to understand each other. Yeah. And to share knowledge and educate. Just because something is different doesn't make it wrong.
Exactly.
Like the other day, what was the big ruling with the Supreme Court?
Oh, about gays and lesbians, transgendered. Yeah, you can't be fired for being gay, lesbian, transgender.
Right.
And my roommate looked at me and goes, wait, that's a thing? And I was like, yeah, why is that a thing? Like, I never knew that was a thing.
So I knew it was a thing, but I have the same kind of response as your roommate, right?
Yeah.
So my problem with it isn't that I didn't know it was a thing. My problem is the fact that we have to have a Supreme Court ruling for basic human decency.
Yeah, it's a shame.
It bothers me to no end, but not for a topic for another show.
Yeah. Well, I think as a society, we're not really taught to deal with things that are, it's like we always talk about, like, we're all just normal, but I don't ever remember being taught that just being different is normal. Like, because if we're all the same, that's boring. Right? So I don't know, it's sort of an interesting thing to apply. And it's funny you said it, because I remember when we were fighting the whole thing about gay marriage a few years ago, I actually would ask my straight friends, and I go, I'm so confused at why straight people act like marriage is so amazing. I go, most of my straight friends talk about how annoying it is, the old ball and chain and the battle axe. And I go, you guys act like marriage is so horrible. And then gays come along and we just want one piece of it, and you act like it's the best thing on the planet. I go, I'm so confused by the message that you're giving me. Like, do you like it? Do you not like it? I'm so confused. And they're like, no, it's like, it's a basic fundamental human right. I go, yeah, that's why I want it. Like, I was just like, it's just as simple as that.
It's like voting.
Yeah. And then I'm like, and I actually had a friend that would, like, he's like, I just don't understand gay marriage. And I said, and I would look at him and I said, but I'm confused. Me being married to a guy doesn't even affect your life. You don't even have to go to my wedding if it makes you uncomfortable. But like, I don't understand how it affects, like, I feel like politicians are more interested in my marriage and sex life than I am. Like, I don't even, you know what I'm saying? I don't even actively date. Like, and they're just always trying to, and it's the same thing when the politicians try to do it with women. There's so much involved in women. Like, I don't date women. I don't even deal with a lot of, like, of a woman's body. So, like, I am the wrong person to make decisions on a woman's body. I know very little about it in that sense, right?
Right.
So, I trust women to be responsible enough to make the decisions that affect their body. So why can't I have the same thing for me as a gay man or someone as a lesbian? That's what I try to tell people all the time. It's just like, so.
No, but it all goes back to what we were talking about. That different isn't wrong.
It's funny, and I'm going to segue into something because somebody asked me one time about giving advice. I did this podcast about entrepreneurship, and the guy asked me, he goes, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to take a leap in anything? And I think this could apply to that. And I told him, and I said, be prepared to be wrong, or prepare to fail. I said, I think so many people are afraid to try anything new because they're afraid they're going to fail. But the truth is, you're probably going to fail because you have to learn the best way to navigate it. And I said, so I think if you realize, I'm going to make this decision, and I know the first step might not be the right one, and the second one might not be the right one, but it's definitely going to, those first two steps are going to get me to the third step, which is probably the right step. And so I think change is sort of the same way. It's like, yeah, you're probably going to be wrong, but that's okay. Like, because you have to learn and educate yourself to be right, I guess. So I that's how I apply that. That's what makes sense to me. Being honest and true to yourself, no one's, first of all, no one's ever died because of that, and there's nothing wrong with trying to be a better person.
Agree. So I have 2 other questions for you.
So, Leila, I love questions.
So first one, what is something that would surprise people to know about you?
God, I'm so open. I don't know if there's anything that could. I will. This is actually one people. So I am a horror filmmaker. I make horror movies mostly. Most people don't know that I'm terribly afraid of the dark. I can't sleep without a light on. Yeah, I'm terribly. So I grew up in a haunted house, and so to this day, I'm even at 45, deathly afraid of the dark, like terrified. Yeah, like it's crippling sometimes. Yeah.
I would never have guessed.
No, and I make horror movies for a living. Yeah. I know, but I use that innate fear that I have to try to
make a cool film.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I'm deathly afraid of the dark. I do have a funny story. No, just real quick. I was dating this guy years and years and years ago when I was younger, and we ended up getting this cabin in the woods of Michigan, near Lake Houghton, and I hope I'm saying that right because I know your fiance is from Michigan, but we ended up being out in the middle of the night, and I remember it was like pitch black, and my boyfriend looks at me and he goes, "You have to go out into the woods and get some kindling for a fire." And I was like, "I'm fine, we're fine. We don't need a fire." And he goes, "Just go." I said, "I can't walk with you. I don't think you understand. I cannot do it." And he's like, "Why?" I go, "I'm just afraid of the dark, man. I can't." Like, it's bizarre. I know. I don't know where it stems from. I don't know if anything happened, but yeah, I'm definitely afraid of the dark. So that's probably the one thing most people don't know about me.
That's awesome. So last question.
Go ahead.
First, you have to take your sunglasses off for this one.
Okay, I don't mind.
So as you, I know,
adjust.
you're
I have to
like,
adjust,
wait,
hold
it's
on.
bright. So as you are walking around normal everyday life,
Yeah.
what if you had the opportunity to just hold up a sign and tell people one thing about you? What would you want them to know?
I have to think about this. Hold on.
Everyone does.
Okay. If I had to
You
hold
have time. There's a plane flying.
Yeah, and my eyes have to adjust to the light. If I could hold up a sign, that's a tough question. But I think it's an important question. When I used to send emails out, I always used to put this phrase at the bottom of emails that said, "I live to inspire." And people always used to ask me about that. And they said, "Where does that come from?" And I said, "I don't know, man." I said, but like I said, I was one of the first people in my family to like follow my career, even though I did it at a later age. And I think even as I get older, I mean, almost daily, people come up to me and like ask me for advice. And I've become some sort of a mentor, which I never, ever, ever imagined in my life. When I was working in a full-time office job, and people would never have to listen to anything I have to say. And then, here we are 15 years later, and it's like people allowed me to be on their show and talk about my story. I think that'd be my motto: is I live to inspire. And it was something I never meant to do, and I still don't mean to do it. It's just for some reason, I became that person. I'm just a really good mentor. So I love inspiring people. People tell me almost every day, like, I'm so glad you did that. Like, I want to do what you do. And it's, sidebar, I will tell you this. I'm so busy living my life that I never stop to think that the things I'm doing are inspiring people. You know, it's like people are like, I want your life. And I was like, really? Like, there's days that I'm so depressed I can't get out of bed because I'm trying to figure out my life. But I guess at the end of the day, I'd rather have that day figuring out the life and the direction I'm going than trying to have those days and never take that chance at all.